Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I'm Rabbi Susan Abramson, coming to you from the sanctuary of Temple Shalom Emeth in Burlington, Massachusetts. And here we are. It's after Thanksgiving, and Hanukkah is next week. And we're thinking about the upcoming Hanukkah holiday, and we're thinking about the values of the Maccabees, who, as we remember from the Hanukkah story, were the ones to fight a foe who they thought was insurmountable, but through their dedication and their faith and their resilience and their courage, were able to retake the temple in Jerusalem and purify it once again so that our people could worship freely and survive as a people. So we think about that in the context of our own times, how we're in the midst of this horrible COVID crisis, and members of our congregation have started to contract the disease, so it's seeming more and more personal. The news is just not good, and so we think about how our faith sustains us during these difficult times. And the song that you've been hearing, which was played by Alan Katz, who is a member of Carlton Willard Village, where I sometimes lead Shabbat services in the area, the beautiful song Ma'ot Sur, which means rock of ages, and how our strength needs to be like a rock, and we need to persevere. And no matter what assailants we have, we need to have the courage to overcome them. We now continue with the singing of L'cha Dodi, Welcoming the Sabbath Bride, on page 138.
L'cha Dodi, L'krat Kala, Shabbat Nikabela Lecha Dodi Lekrat Kala B'nei Shabbat Nikabela Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad Ishmianu el Hamyuchad Adonai Echad, Ushemo Echad, B'Shemu Tiferet B'lit Hila. Lecha Dodi, L'krat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Nikabela. Lecha Dodi, L'krat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Nikabela. Hitoreri, Hitoreri, Kiva Ore, Kumi Ori, Uri, Uri, Shir Daberi, Kibod Adonai Alayim Nigla. Lecha Dodi, L'krat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Nikabela. Lecha Dodi, L'krat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Nikabela. Oi v'shalom, Ateret ba'ala, Gam b'simcha, Utzahola, Toch emunei, Am segula, Boi chala, Boi chala, Lecha Dodi, L'krat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Nikabela. Lecha Dodi, L'krat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Nikabela. B'nei Shabbat Nikabela.
I would now like to invite the Lepo family to light the Shabbat candles for us this evening.
1, 2. Wow.
Baruch
Atah Adonai Elohim Melech Haolam Asher Kichem V'Mitzav Cantorial Shabbat.
Amen.
Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with the mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Amen. Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen, 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 amen.
Please rise if you are able for the Baruch Hu, our call to worship on page 146. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praise be Adonai, to whom praise is due, now and forever.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach. Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam va'ed.
Page 148.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokhmah potech sha'arim uvitvuna meshanei etim machalif et ha'azmanim.
Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim.
Page 150.
Ahavat olam bid Yisrael Amcha ahavta Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu lemadeta Al ken Adonai Eloheinu bishachvenu uvkumenu nasiach bechukecha v'nismach b'divrei toratcha ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, נגה יומם ולילה. יהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. אוהב עמו ישראל.
Everlasting love, you offer your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, When we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Israel.
We now continue our service with the most important of all Jewish prayers, the Shema. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. On page 152 and 153.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
Please be seated. We now continue with the V'ahavta on page 154.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'kol levavcha u'v'kol nafshecha u'v'kol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech u'shachbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam le'od al yadecha v'hayu letotafot ben einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet.
We now continue with the singing of Mi Chamocha, the song the Israelites sang when they crossed the Red Sea to freedom from Pharaoh's grip, on page 158.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף תהילה, נורא תהילות אוסף תהילה, אדוני לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. זה אלי אנו ויאמרו, זה אלי אנו ויאמרו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
We now continue with the Hashkivenu prayer on page 160. The Hashkivenu prayer is really an important one for us this week. It talks about how God will shelter us with God's compassion and with God's peace, and how we live underneath God's umbrella. And so we think about how God is around us, supporting us, and helping us deal with whatever issues we face in our lives at this moment.
Ashivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom, L'shalom. V'ha'amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. Ufros aleinu Sukat Shomecha, Ufros aleinu Sukat Shomecha. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. Amen.
Continue with the singing of Vishamru. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the generations as a covenant for all time, on page 162.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'ri'olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'ri'olam. B'ni uvein B'nei Yisrael, Ori le'olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'ri'olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'ri'olam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam b'ri'olam.
We now rise, if we are able, for the next section of our service called the Tofila on page 164.
Anananananana Adonai. Ananananana Svatai Tivta. Ananananana ufi yagid tehilatecha. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana svatai tivta. Ananananana ufi yagid tehilatecha. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana svatai tivta. Ananananana ufi yagid tehilatecha. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana svatai tivta. Ananananana ufi yagid tehilatecha. Ananananana Adonai. Ananananana svatai tivta. Ananananana ufi yagid tehilatecha.
Page 166. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivcha, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, L'Zacher Chazdei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, L'man Shmo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer, U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham Vezrat Sarah.
Page 168. Ata gibor le'olam Adonai, mechaye hakol ata rav lehoshia. Mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. Sohomech nohovdim verofech oholim, umatir asurim. Kahayim emunato lishenei afar micha mocha baal givurot umido melach melech memid umchayei umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman ata lehachayot ha'akol Baruch ata Adonai mechayei Hakol. Page 170. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kedoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch ata Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
Please be seated. Page 173.
May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Makadesh HaShabbat.
We continue with the singing of Shalom Rav, a song for peace, on page 178.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam V'tov be'enecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael B'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Tasim Leolam Tasim Leolam.
Grant abundant peace to Israel, your people forever, for you are the sovereign God of all peace. May it be pleasing to you to bless your people Israel in every season and moment with your peace. Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace.
We continue with the Misha Beirach Get Well prayer on page 371. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. This evening we think in particular of Eliza Major, Gina Rippon, Carolyn Eisenstein, Al Friedman, Ron Calabrero, Ellen Waldron. And at this time, if there are names of others you'd like us to keep in our hearts and our minds, you may say their names aloud or in your hearts. And we also think of all of those tens and hundreds of thousands of people who are suffering with the COVID disease right now. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for all of their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send all of them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen.
Mi sheberach avotinu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha la'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We pause for a moment of silent prayer.
This is a song that we sing as part of the liturgy for every Shabbat service, but this is a different version from the one we usually do. It's a more lyrical version written by Jeff Klepper. The song is Ose Shalom, a very important song, a very important prayer, meaning grant us peace.
Ose shalom, shalom bimromav, uya'aseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Uya'aseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, Amen. Ose shalom, shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
So at this moment of the year, I am reminded of a really special trip I took last year at this time during the Hanukkah holiday. I went with my good friend, Rabbi Kinneret Shiryon, who's the rabbi in Modiin, Israel. We went to Tenerife in the Canary Islands, and we spent the first few nights of Hanukkah there, and then we ended up going back to Israel, where I stayed with her for about 10 days, and we celebrated Hanukkah there. And since she's lives in Modiin, that's where I spent the last part of Hanukkah. And as you might know, Modiin is the home of the Maccabees. So it was just incredible to be in the home of the Maccabees on Hanukkah last year. So I wanted to share a little bit of my video footage of what I took from living there. And Modiin right now is a thriving new upcoming metropolitan area. But it's right next to an Arab village, actually a number of Arab villages, and her house overlooks one of those villages. And it's a very, very complicated situation. So enjoy. Standing in the foothills of Modiin, which is the home of the Maccabees, Mattathias and Judah and their whole family, who were the ones to begin the fight against the Syrian Greeks, which ended up in their overtaking their oppressors and regaining the temple in Jerusalem, which is the whole story of Hanukkah, began right here, and you can just sense the Maccabees fighting the Greek Syrians right here. It's known by archaeologists that these were graves either of the Maccabees or people who lived at that time. Right near the graves of the ancient Maccabees stands a modern memorial to the Israelis who were killed in the Battle of Independence in 1948 in this same region. It was so special to be able to spend the final night of Hanukkah in Modiin and to be able to walk around the city and see Chanukiot or Hanukkah menorahs outside of people's houses as well as in their windows, which is a custom in order to publicize the miracle of a little jar of oil lasting for 8 days instead of 1. And we also made a special version of Israeli latkes, or potato pancakes, in this case using apples.
The batter that we're making is very special batter because there is sweetness to these latkes.
Having been living in Modiin for the past 10 days, I feel like I've had a range of emotions. At first, I was really curious about what it was like to live here, and my basic emotion was curiosity. And then as I learned a little more, I have to say I felt a little bit of fear living in Kinneret's house, being so close to the border with Beit Sira. And now that I've been here for a while and I'm about to leave, I just feel like I understand that everybody here has a sense of normalcy and just living from day to day under these circumstances, and that things don't happen in a negative way here. There's just a living in a peaceful way next to the Arab neighbors, although I don't know how the Arab neighbors are feeling, and I'm sure they have a certain degree of anger and frustration. But nevertheless, the reality is what it is, and these two peoples are living right next to each other. Hopefully there'll be a better solution soon, and as my friend Kinneret said, it's so horrible for these two groups of people to have to be separated like they are, and hopefully one day, sooner rather than later, there'll be able to be some sort of agreement so that the two peoples can get together and live in peace, and everybody will feel a lot happier about their living situation. We now turn to page 586 for one of the concluding sections of our service called the Aleinu, which is a hope that the world will be brought together and united under God's values. Please rise.
Aleinu lishabeach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומשה יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת. אין עוד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
The introduction to the Qaddish Prayer may be found on page 599. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at the season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We recall those whose yahrzeits or anniversary of whose deaths occur this week: Eleanor Gordon, Mark Spector, Diane Kaplan, John White, Aline Silver, Milton Kornetsky, Norman Levin. And at this time, if there are names of others you'd like us to keep in our hearts and our minds as we prepare to recite the Kaddish Prayer, you may say their names aloud or in your hearts at this moment. We also think of the hundreds of thousands of people who have died recently and in these past months of the COVID disease and who are dying every minute. Zichronam livracha. May all of their memories be for a blessing. Please rise in body or spirit to recite the Kaddish Prayer on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei rabbah, ba'alma divrach yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'yizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach l'olam l'almei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei dekudasha b'richu, L'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to our country, to all Israel and all the world, and let us say together, Amen. You may be seated. We now continue with the Kaddish on page 123, Rise if you are able, and that will be followed by the Motzi, the blessing over the bread.
The heaven and the earth were finished in all their array. On the seventh day God finished the work that God had been doing, and God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Motzi lechem min haaretz, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, motzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
We're going to have a special first night of Hanukkah small video for you this coming Thursday evening, the first night of Hanukkah, that I'm making in conjunction with Carlton Willard Village, where we usually go to do a Hanukkah party during the season. And then next Friday night, our Gimel class in our religious school is going to be leading a very special Hanukkah service for all. Shabbat Shalom.
Ma'oz Tzur. Ma'oz Tzur Yeshuati Lecha Na'eh Mishabeach Tikon Beit Tefilati V'sham Toda Nizabeach Li'ed Tachin Matbeach Mitzar Hamna Beach Az Egmor Beshir Mizmor Chanukat HaMizbeach Az Egmor Beshir Mizmor Chanukat HaMizbeach. Rock of Ages, let our song praise your saving power. You amid the raging foes were our sheltering tower. Furious they assailed us, but your arm availed us, and your word broke their sword when our own strength failed us, and your word broke their sword when our